Item 1 is call to order. We'll go around the room and do introductions, starting with Sue.
Sue Schill, City Attorney.
Ryan Austin, District 1 Alderman.
Jeff Penscover, District 4 Alderman.
Jake Catnaugh, District 5 Alderman.
Dennis Pollock, Ward 6.
Patrick Delaney, District 7.
Madeline Pumpus, District 8.
Thank you. Item 2, discuss and consider for approval an ordinance which would require that the municipal judge be an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of Wisconsin. Attorney Schill.
Yes, this is a proposed ordinance. I was talking with Judge Kastenholz about this. I guess we're both in agreement that this would probably be a good thing for the city to make sure that our municipal judge is an attorney. The history has been that it's always been an attorney, but that has not been a requirement. I would say in almost every city that I've dealt with that's of, a decent size, the judge is an attorney. There are some smaller towns and maybe villages or cities that might have non-attorneys. But I guess it's my recommendation that that position be someone that's licensed to practice law in the state. I think the legal knowledge and experience is important. So I would just recommend the adoption of the ordinance.
Questions, comments?
This is an elected position, correct?
It is, yes.
And there's no state ordinance providing that this has to be an attorney
There is not.
but there is required, education, I guess you would say,
Right,
annually that they have to fulfill.
yes.
Well, in my opinion, I think that an elected position should be up to the people to who they want on there. And if it is an attorney or somebody from some other background that might be well-versed in the goings-on, it's up to the people to decide. That's my personal opinion. You guys can decide on whatever.
Any issues with having a lawyer that is also practicing law within the community?
No. I mean, Peter practices law in the community as corporate counsel for the county presently. I mean, obviously, if there could be a conflict or something, then you can ask another municipal judge to sit in to hear the case. I mean, I think, Nakusa, Grand Rapids, they all have attorneys, obviously, be their counsel, and those are all persons that have active practices outside of being the judge.
Can you speak to any cons you see to having someone elected that is not an attorney, and why that might be an issue, or why we want to make this mandatory?
Well, I don't know. I guess it's a legal proceedings. It's trials, evidentiary issues. It's all things that, in law school you're basically trained on. I mean, I can't say that it would be a disaster if it was a non-attorney, but I guess it'd kind of be interesting to be prosecuting in front of someone that's, I guess it's not an attorney, that may or may not understand, basic legal theories and reasoning, and, I guess I think it's important to the position. But, I mean, we've always had a judge, or an attorney, or a judge that's been an attorney, so I haven't practiced in front of non-attorney judges, so.
Thank you.
I'm not versed on licensing requirements, but would this restrict us from having someone who is a retired and no longer maintaining their license from being or running for a municipal judge position?
Well, it would be an attorney licensed to practice in the state. So I guess a lot of times retired judges are still members of the bar and still licensed because they give them a pretty good discount on membership in the bar, and also the education requirements are a little different depending, but I guess, right, the ordinance as stated or as presented would be you need to be, have a valid license to practice, and with that comes certain education requirements and such to be a member of the bar, to be licensed. So it couldn't be someone without a license or who lost their license or who hasn't kept up their license.
Thank you.
I'm certainly in favor of making sure that the municipal judge has passed the bar and is a licensed attorney. I think if we had a city doctor, I'd feel the same way about their licensing. The one question I had was the ordinance strikes 2-year terms and makes them every 4 years. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, there was actually another part of Chapter 2 where when that term was changed to 4 years, which has probably been 5 years ago, I'd say, the change was made at the beginning of Chapter 2 where it lists who the officers are in the terms of alderperson and city attorney, clerk, treasurer, but, so that was changed to 4 years, but tucked away in the municipal court chapter was what I referenced in the ordinance still had the reference to a 2-year term, so I thought I would clean that up at this time. So that's not a change to the year. There was already the ordinance made, which actually was a charter ordinance to change the term.
Okay, so that's just cleanup then.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sue, I just have one question. I see that there's no boundary or anything, so does that mean that whoever would get elected could live anywhere in the state of Wisconsin, or?
No, you would have to be, since you're elected for the city, you have to be an elector of the city, so you have to reside in the state of Wisconsin. I'm sorry, reside in the city of
You'd have to
Wisconsin
live in
Rapids.
the city is what you're saying.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Doesn't have to be in the ordinance then?
I believe it's in the state statute
Okay, that's
in
fine.
terms of elected officials, and it may be at the beginning of 2, but otherwise it's in the officer section of the state statutes. If it isn't in ours, I can look here. But yeah, it is somewhere. I'm gonna have to find it if you want it.
General question. Since we're doing cleanup on this portion of the ordinance, I'm not sure the process and the workload for that, but there was a legislative committee referral from May related to this same ordinance and cleaning up other sections. I don't know if it makes sense to do those, to bring that back up and do a full cleanup, if that helps publishing from our clerk's workload.
I think that would be a separate item, but we can bring it back. Are we still waiting on an answer to your question, Dennis?
Yep.
Attorney Schill, are you,
Yeah, I'm looking here. If you want the answer to the question, I can
Okay.
keep looking. Officer 6209. Might be in chapter. Court.
while she's looking at that up, is there any other discussion anybody would like to have on this item? I'll just say, because that question is not pertinent to my intentions, I'll make a motion to approve the changes to section 2.20, para 2 of the Wisconsin Rapids Municipal Code to read as follows in the proposed ordinance.
I'll second.
Motion by Cattenhaw, second by Austin. All those who vote in the affirmative?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 2-1. Item 3, discussion regarding the city ordinance regulating chickens, found in 25.02, para 3 of the municipal code. Referral from Alderperson Palmquist. You want to start it off?
Sure. So I was contacted by a resident interested in getting 4 female hens and abiding by what was written into our ordinance and complying with it. However, they had ran into difficulty in getting approval from their neighbors. The document, the permit application looks like you need to have your residential properties sign off that you're getting chickens, which is strange. And then in reading the ordinance, I realized that it wasn't a permission, it was a notification of the neighbors. That seems a little burdensome. I mean, you're going over to your neighbors and telling them that you're getting chickens and not asking permission, and then submitting a document. Right, you're submitting a document that says, I've told my neighbors I'm getting chickens. We don't do that with any other animal in the city. I don't tell my neighbor that I'm getting dogs. And then the confusion that it leads to creates a burden for our residents. They could send certified mail to their neighbors notifying them and submit that with their application or permit, and then it's just difficult and confusing. I'm unsure why it's there. And it would be ideal to have it removed from the ordinance so that we had more people complying with it, actually filling out the application and paying the fees, and then we have an accurate account of who has chickens within the city, instead of people getting frustrated with our process and just not doing it and getting chickens anyway.
I got something.
So I don't understand why we as a city are in, like, we don't want people to be self-sufficient and do things on their own. And we got to always be watching over, and all the neighbors have to be looking at what their neighbors are doing and interested in what their neighbors are doing and if they're doing it right or wrong. Personally, I don't think that there should be a permit that you need for this. Also, I think that the number of chickens of 4, in my opinion, is low for a larger family. Maybe they would want to have more than 4 chickens. Notifying neighbors, I'm definitely for taking that part out.
Well, I wrote the ordinance, and I looked at quite a few ordinances around the state. This was a fairly common part of it. It's just a notification. I guess if it's confusing, we can make it clearer. I am a neighbor that is next door, or was next door to chickens, and I was not notified because of the person not notified me. I would have liked to have been notified to talk to the neighbor about maybe where, because I have dogs. I have a fenced-in yard, but I have dogs, and I probably would have liked to talk to them about, I wouldn't have objected, but, you know, where is it going to be, you know, is it hopefully not going to be right at the fence where my dogs are going to be sniffing under at the chickens constantly. It's, you know, generally, depending how many neighbors, especially in the city, you usually might not have more than 4 or 5 neighbors. We give notification when there's going to be a street closing. You're supposed to notify the neighbors. I think it's a courtesy to allow it. It's, like I said, it's not a veto or that you need their permission, but I think it's, I mean, you notice the chickens. The chickens aren't there anymore, not because of my dogs. They decided not to have chickens anymore, but I think it's, you know, I didn't mind them, but I guess I would have liked to have been notified to have a conversation before. You know, like I said, I think it's, you know, more of a courtesy thing. I think it is. I talked to Kyle, we've never had complaints regarding, you know, people not getting their permits or having problems with the permitting process, although I guess we just did, but, I mean, I guess I don't have super strong feelings on removing the notification. I think it's good to have, especially in a residential area where everyone's pretty close to each other. And as far as having the ordinance at all, I think it's important to have. I think it's a good health thing, you know, making sure the chickens are taken care of, they have the appropriate, you know, bedding and area and so on, so we don't have issues with, you know, inhumane treatment and so on. I don't think a lot of people take advantage of it, you know, as many as maybe we thought at one point. So I guess that's just my thoughts on it.
I like that you were open to the idea, Attorney Schill, and working with your neighbor. I think that that's something that we should have, absolutely. I hope that we as a city do not need to have ordinances that explain to our residents how they can be cordial and courteous neighbors. I think that that piece of notifying or discussing it with your neighbors could be something that is written into the process that goes with community development as something that you should consider before you decide to have chickens. But again, I don't think it needs to be in the ordinance itself. And I am the neighbor of somebody who has 5 chihuahuas, and I wish that there was something that helped us get through that, but there's nothing for any other animal that is required.
So Alderperson Palmquist, this is your referral. What would you like to see the committee do with it?
I would like to see a motion to revise at minimum, removing notification of neighbors. I am not opposed to changing the number of chickens. I do think that we should definitely keep roosters out of the discussion, but at least removing that notification would hopefully get more people to document that they have chickens the similar way we register our dogs within the city.
Thank you. And that is what the referral was for. I think if we want to, we can discuss the whole ordinance and the life of chickens in Wisconsin Rapids, but I think they've been living well since this has been enacted, so we can clean up some language and make it easier for folks to have them. But at this time, I'm going to make a motion to direct staff to revise city ordinance regulating chickens found in 25.02, para 3 of the municipal code, to remove the notification to neighboring properties.
I think it was a discussion on the whole ordinance, wasn't it? Isn't that what you wanted was, because I read through the whole chicken ordinance. I thought that's what it said here, was to discuss the chicken ordinance.
I am not opposed to discussing the entire chicken ordinance. The issue came up from the requirement to notify neighbors. And I think if we're going to be editing a section of an ordinance, it's more time efficient to talk about all of the things versus one.
I would agree. So is there anything else anybody else would like to change in the chicken ordinance? Does anybody else want to discuss how many chickens would be a proper amount of chickens? Yeah, what's the difference between 6 and 4, or 12 and whatever? Well, we don't want to start a hatchery here in Wisconsin Rapids in somebody's backyard. But I do think that there are families that are larger that would like to have more than 4 chickens, I would imagine.
I don't own any chickens, so I really don't have anything to speak to here. Is there anyone in the crowd that would like to speak to this issue?
What would be a reasonable number? Like, I really think 4 is too little. Should we, are we talking 8 or 10 or?
I guess if my motion's not going to get a second, we'll dispose of it and come back to the item.
I'll second the motion on the floor.
Okay.
I would like to make an amendment to the motion on the number of chickens. I think we could decide on something that's reasonable, that is not going to be a hatchery inside the city, but yet we'll be able to fulfill some families' needs that likes to be self-sufficient and have their own fresh eggs. So I would, how about 10? per 10 per lot.
You know, to me, if this was an issue that was brought, you know, forward, you know, requesting a specific number, that'd be something to speak to, but at this point, we're just kind of grasping at straws. So to me, nobody's here to speak to this issue, so I mean, I really don't have an issue with the number at this point. I don't have any constituents asking me to increase the number, so I'm comfortable leaving it as is.
I am as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe Grand Rapids has an ordinance on chickens. And I think they have a particular number, and there's, maybe a person might want to check with them to see just what their ordinance reads. I don't want to really say anything, get the wrong number, but it doesn't seemed to me like 4 was the number that they had, but that might be a starting point anyway.
Sure.
And that's not including chicks up to 3 weeks old, so.
Maddie?
Farm animals are dependent on the space that you have. So we're trying to put a number down on paper, which would be standard across all properties when all property sizes vary. So for chickens, the standard is 4 square feet of coop space per bird and 8 square feet of run space per bird. If we wrote the ordinance like that, then the number of birds would be dependent on the number of space you have. So we wouldn't have smaller properties in the city with 10 to 12 birds. They would be restricted to the space that they have for those animals to live and thrive.
I'm in favor of that.
Well, being that there's a motion and a second, this will go to the common council, and if you don't agree with, if this passes, the motion at hand, you can discuss other options for the chickens of Wisconsin Rapids. So, motion by Catnaw, second by Austin. All those who vote in the affirmative?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes 3-0. Item 4 is adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor? Aye. This meeting is adjourned at 6:38 PM.